Ever dreamed of living in medieval times? You know, with all the epic battles, brave knights, and grand royal banquets? Well, hold on to your horses. The reality was a lot less glamorous. In fact, it was filthy, bizarre, and sometimes downright terrifying. From bread that could make you see things to actual court trials for pigs, get ready for a trip back in time. Here are 20 shocking facts about the Middle Ages that will make you so incredibly grateful for modern life. Let's dive right in. First up, personal hygiene, or rather, the lack of it. People in the Middle Ages rarely bathed, seriously. Taking a full bath was often seen as unhealthy, a luxury, or even sinful. Most folks might have a proper wash only once or twice a year if they were lucky. Instead of bathing, they just changed their outer layers of clothing and hoped that was enough to cover up the aroma. Imagine walking through a medieval town. The smell alone would be an experience. And speaking of unpleasant experiences, let's talk about bathrooms. In castles, the toilet, known as a garderobe, was basically just a stone seat with a hole that opened directly down the side of the castle wall. Whatever you dropped went straight into the moat or onto the ground below. Spare a thought for the guards who might be standing patrol right underneath. It gives a whole new meaning to the phrase, "watch your head." Now, picture this. You're at a medieval feast. The table is laden with food, but something's missing. A fork. That's because when forks first appeared in Europe, the church condemned them as the devil's tool. They were considered an unnatural and overly refined instrument. The proper godly way to eat was with your fingers, a knife, or a spoon. Using a fork was seen as scandalous and an affront to God. If you got sick, you wouldn't be heading to a pharmacy. Instead, you might seek out some magic remedies. Medieval doctors genuinely believed that things like unicorn horns and dragon bones had powerful healing properties. Of course, what they were actually selling were narwhal tusks and dinosaur fossils. But in a world without modern science, people were desperate for any cure they could find, no matter how fantastical. Even if you decided to brave a bath, the soap itself was pretty awful. Medieval soap was a homemade concoction, usually made from animal fat, wood, ash, and lye. It was a smelly, greasy, and harsh substance. You probably would have smelled worse after washing with it than you did before. No wonder people avoided bathing. But the real nightmare was medieval medicine. The go-to cure for almost any ailment was bloodletting. Got a fever? A headache? Feeling down? Doctors believed that sickness was caused by an imbalance of the four humors in your body: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And the solution? Drain some of your blood to restore the balance. This practice often just made sick people weaker, and in many cases, it was fatal. And you were never alone in your medieval home. You always had roommates, rats. Rats were absolutely everywhere. They infested homes, castles, and even people's beds. These rodents weren't just a nuisance. They were carriers of fleas that spread the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death. This devastating pandemic wiped out up to half of Europe's entire population. When it came to beauty standards, pale was the new tan. Noble women went to extreme lengths to achieve a ghostly white complexion, as it signified wealth and that you didn't have to work in the fields. To get this look, they would paint their faces with a makeup called Venetian ceruse, which was made from white lead. It gave them the desired pale look, but it was also highly toxic. Over time, it caused skin damage, hair loss, and even death. The price of beauty was truly deadly. While the beauty standards were toxic, the drinks were surprisingly sensible. Water from rivers and wells was often contaminated with bacteria and was incredibly unsafe to drink. So what did everyone drink instead? Beer. A weak, low-alcohol beer called small beer was a daily staple for everyone, including children. The brewing process killed off most of the dangerous germs, making it a much safer alternative to water. This next one is truly bizarre. In the Middle Ages, animals could be put on trial. If a pig, a dog, or any other animal attacked a person or damaged property, it could be arrested, formally charged, and tried in a court of law with a lawyer representing it. If found guilty, the animal would be sentenced just like a human, often to public execution. There are even records of pigs being dressed in tiny human clothes for their day in court. Let there be light, but maybe hold your nose. For the average person, candles weren't made of pleasant-smelling beeswax. They were made from tallow, which is rendered animal fat. These tallow candles produced a foul, greasy smell when they burned, smoked heavily, and filled the room with a layer of soot. Lighting your home meant making it stink. Thinking of getting married. In the Middle Ages, love had very little to do with it. Marriage, especially among the nobility, was purely a business transaction. Families arranged marriages to secure land, forge political alliances, or gain wealth. Romance was a concept for poets and minstrels, not a foundation for a lifelong partnership. And if you broke the law, you'd face some truly brutal punishments. Justice was swift and severe. If you were caught stealing a loaf of bread, you could lose a hand. If you were accused of gossiping, you might be forced to wear a scold as bridle or a shame mask, a heavy, spiked iron muzzle that you had to wear in public as a form of humiliation. To protect themselves from all the perceived dangers of the world, people turned to folk remedies. One of the most popular was garlic. It was hung on doors and windows to ward off everything from demons and witches to the plague itself. And hey, even if it didn't scare away evil spirits, it probably did a great job of keeping smelly, unbathed neighbors at a distance. Let's talk about Laundry Day. Or, more accurately, the horrifying smell of medieval Laundry Day. Tanners, who worked with animal hides to make leather, used a surprising ingredient to soften the material: stale horse urine. This ammonia-rich liquid was also sometimes used by washerwomen to bleach clothes and remove tough stains. Imagine the smell wafting through the town on Laundry Day. We often associate witch hunts with places like Salem in the 17th century, but the fear of witchcraft was already rampant in the late Middle Ages. Across Europe, thousands of people, mostly women, were accused of being witches. They were subjected to horrific trials and executed in brutal ways. This was a terrifying period of mass hysteria and persecution that lasted for centuries. With disease and low life expectancy, death was a constant presence. Cemeteries were so overcrowded that they couldn't handle the sheer number of bodies. Graves were often shallow, and old bones would frequently be dug up to make room for new burials. Sometimes these bones would poke out of the ground. Some churches and chapels even created ossuaries, decorating their walls and ceilings with thousands of human skulls and skeletons. It was a stark, everyday reminder of mortality. And remember how people rarely bathed? Well, they rarely washed their clothes either. Washing fabric was a difficult, labor-intensive process, and frequent washing would wear out the expensive material. Instead of washing, people would simply air their clothes out, beat the dust from them, or maybe sprinkle some dried herbs like lavender inside to mask the smell. Your favorite tunic would probably be worn for months on end without a single wash. Before smartphones and alarm clocks, how did anyone wake up on time? The answer is simple: the rooster. The crowing of the rooster at dawn was the natural alarm clock for the entire village. Everyone's schedule was tied to the sun and the local farm animals. If the rooster decided to oversleep, well, so did you. Finally, even your daily bread could be deadly. Rye was a common grain for making bread, but it was often infected with a fungus called ergot. Consuming ergot-contaminated bread could lead to a condition called ergotism, which caused painful convulsions, hallucinations, and a terrifying burning sensation in the limbs. Some historians even believe that outbreaks of ergot poisoning could explain some medieval accounts of demonic possession and mass hysteria. So there you have it. Medieval life was less Game of Thrones glamour and more like a season of Survivor, filth edition. From toxic makeup and animal trials to hallucination-inducing bread, it's pretty amazing that anyone survived to see the Renaissance. The next time you take a hot shower or use a fork, take a moment to be grateful you're living in the 21st century. If you enjoyed this weird trip through history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and let me know in the comments. Which one of these facts shocked you the most? Thanks for watching, and see you next time.